We hadn't seen Matt for weeks. At work, people came up with their own theories because that's what bored office drones do when someone just drops off the map. Some said he'd finally taken that job overseas. Others whispered that his sister had taken a turn for the worse, and he couldn't handle it. Even our boss had this clueless shrug like, if he doesn't answer his phone, what am I supposed to do? And moved on with his life. I didn't move on that easily. 9 years of friendship doesn't just evaporate. You don't go from daily memes and stupid voice messages to absolute silence without something being wrong. I kept checking our chats, reading the last LOL. He sent it 3 in the morning like an idiot, as if I'd missed some hidden warning in it. So when he walked into our usual bar that Friday night, like nothing had happened, my brain stalled. He just stepped in, looked around, and grinned when he saw me, like he'd only been gone a couple days. The place was loud, sticky floor, TVs blaring some game nobody was really watching. And there he was, weaving between tables with that same lanky walk. I honestly thought he was a hallucination at first. My heart did this weird dropkick thing in my chest. I stood up so fast I knocked over my beer. "Matt!" I barely recognized my own voice. "Dan!" he yelled, like we just bumped into each other at the grocery store. He wrapped me in this clumsy hug, patting my back way too hard. "Still alive, huh?" "That was my line," I said, pulling back to look at him. Up close he looked almost normal, a little thinner. Maybe there were dark half moons under his eyes, and his beard was more patchy than usual, like he'd tried growing it out and given up halfway. He smelled faintly like antiseptic and something I couldn't place, maybe old incense or chemicals. But he was smiling, and his eyes were bright, that same wild glint that made HR nervous. "Where the hell have you been?" I asked. It came out sharper than I meant. He just waved at the bartender. 2 beers and a shot for the prodigal son. He turned back to me. "God, I miss this shitty place." I kept staring. "You disappear, man. Nobody could reach you. Zach said he went by your apartment, and nobody opened the door. You ghosted the group chat. Even your boss doesn't know where you are." Matt shrugged. "Yeah, phone died. For a month." He smirked. "Battery life's getting worse every year. Don't you read the news?" The bartender dropped our drinks off, and Matt toasted me like nothing was wrong. It pissed me off and relieved me at the same time. I wanted to punch him and hug him and shake him until his teeth rattled. "Your sister?" I finally asked because that's what we all worried about. "How's Abigail?" For the first time, something flickered behind his eyes. Not sadness exactly, more like intensity. He leaned closer so I could barely hear him over the bar noise. "She's getting better," he said. "Like, actually better. The doctors are confused. They thought it was just a remission at first, but..." He trailed off, looked down at his drink. "They're saying things like miraculous response." That's amazing," I said. Genuine warmth stabbed through the irritation. "Holy shit, man. Why didn't you say anything?" He swirled his beer. "Kind of hard to explain without sounding crazy." "Since when has that stopped you?" He laughed. The conversation loosened after that. We slid into the usual rhythm. Office gossip, stupid stories from college, teasing each other about failed relationships. The bar got louder and hazier as the night went on. I watched him talk with his hands like always, ring clicking against the glass. Sometimes his gaze wandered, not to the TV or the door, but somewhere slightly above people's heads, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. I noticed it every time I mentioned the hospital. His jaw would tense, then he'd relax it and change the subject. Around midnight, he looked at me over his empty bottle. "You got plans this weekend?" I shook my head. Was going to go home, play something, and regret my life choices. "What?" "Come over," he said. "Crash at my place. Like the old days." "I'm serious." His tone shifted, less jokey, more eager. "I've got stuff to tell you, and I don't feel like drinking alone anymore." I hesitated. "I mean, sure, but..." "What? You gonna say no after I rose from the dead to see you?" He grinned. "Come on, Dan." I cleaned up. I even bought decent beer. He hadn't cleaned up. I'd been to his place. It was always clean. Weirdly clean for someone who lived mostly on takeout. He used to throw these tiny get-togethers there, maybe 6 people max, background music low, so nobody would complain. It was his safe zone. Yeah, okay, I said. Why not? We finished our drinks, paid, stepped out into the cool night. The city was doing that late Friday thing. Groups laughing too loud, taxis honking, some guys smoking outside a kebab place, staring at nothing. Matt shoved his hands in his pockets and fell in a step beside me like we'd done this last week, not 2 months ago. You really okay? I asked quietly as we walked. No yoke. He glanced at me. For a second the mask slipped and I saw how raw he actually was. Then it snapped back. Never better. I didn't believe him, but I wanted to. I was tired and a little drunk and lonely, and I missed my friend. His building hadn't changed. Concrete hallway, buzzing fluorescent light. That same weird dark patch near the stairwell that maintenance never painted over. We climbed to the 3rd floor, me breathing a little heavier than I'd like to admit. Matt stopped at his door, fished his keys out, and froze for half a heartbeat, like he was listening again. You okay? I asked. Yeah. He unlocked the door, just making sure he's awake. Ooh, he pushed the door open. The smell hit me like a physical slap. It was thick and sour and layered, like garbage that had been wet, and then dried, and then wet again. Rot and mold, and something metallic underneath. I gagged on instinct, hand flying to my nose. Jesus, Matt. Yeah, sorry about that, he said brightly, like I'd commented on a dusty shelf. Cool mean. The hallway inside was a canyon of trash bags. Not 1 or 2, dozens. Black plastic bulging with God knows what, stacked in heaps that narrowed the path to a crooked S shape. Some were ripped, leaking grayish sludge. The floor was sticky. I heard the crunch of something brittle under my shoe. My brain hiccuped. This was not his place, but messy. This was a different category. This was hoarder documentary shit. You sure you're okay? I asked, staring at a pile of pizza boxes teetering against the wall. Because this is... Yeah, he cut me off, stepping over a collapsed bag. Work's been insane. I just let things slide. I'll handle it this weekend. I stared at a plate on the shoe rack with something green fuzzed into unrecognizable shape. You said you cleaned up. He laughed, pushing deeper into the apartment. You always focus on the wrong details, man. Come on, beer. He squeezed sideways into the kitchen, shoulder brushing hanging bags. I stayed at the threshold because the smell was worse in there, hotter, like rotten meat had gotten trapped against the radiator and forgotten. The sink overflowed with dishes. A pot with a crust welded to its sides sat on the stove. Ring of something dark burned around it. There were more bags here, stacked in front of the fridge. He tugged on the fridge handle, but it barely moved. Feck. Matt, it's fine. He jammed his knee into a box, shoving it aside. Something sloshed inside and hit the floor. He grimaced and kicked the bag away. Just give me a sec. Go chill in the living room. You know the way. I didn't want to step further in. Every instinct screamed, turn around, make up an excuse, bail. But he was half buried in his own crap, wrestling with a garbage bag and swearing under his breath. It felt wrong to walk out. Yeah, I muttered. Sure. I pressed myself sideways and shuffled through the hallway, careful not to brush anything. The air felt damp and warm. There were buzzing sounds I didn't want to locate. A roach darted across my shoe and vanished under a stack of newspapers. My skin crawled. Halfway down the hall, something yellow on the wall caught my eye. A sticky note, bent at the corner, written in Matt's messy all caps. Angel procedure, do not forget. Under it in a list. Knock twice before entering the living room after dark. Do not look directly under the robe. Kitchen and hallway must stay filthy. No exceptions. Never feed him with your left hand. If he starts humming, leave the apartment. Immediately, I snorted despite myself. What is this, your new cleaning schedule? I called back. From the kitchen came a thud and a muffled shit. Seriously, dude? I said, reading the note again. Kitchen and hallway must stay filthy. As rules go, that one was creative. The last line did something weird in my stomach, though. The way, leave the apartment. Immediately. was underlined twice, pen pressed hard enough to nearly rip the paper. I tore my eyes away and kept moving. The change happened at the living room doorway. There was no visible barrier. No tape, no curtain, nothing. Just one step from the sour warmth of the hallway onto the smooth wood floor of the living room. But as soon as my foot crossed, the smell dropped off a cliff. Cool air, a faint lemon cleaner scent. I inhaled sharply, my lungs grateful and confused. The living room was spotless. Not tidy, I shoved things under the couch. It looked like a showroom. The coffee table was clear except for a coaster and a remote lined up right at the edge. The TV screen had a faint reflective sheen, no dust. The books on the shelves were straight, color-coordinated. The plants in the corner were alive, leaves glossy. It was like someone had drawn a line at the doorway and said, "Rut stops here." I opened my mouth to call out some sarcastic comment about his priorities, and then I saw the thing in the armchair. It sat in Matt's faded blue armchair, like it owned the place. I thought it was a person at first, hunched over, wrapped in a white robe that almost glowed in the lamplight. The hood was so deep I couldn't see a face at all, just darkness where the head should be. The robe fell all the way to the floor, pooling there, fabric heavy and thick like it was made of something denser than cotton. Its hands rested on the armrests. I fixated on those because they were the only visible skin. Long fingers too long. The nails were yellowish, thick, and ragged like someone had chewed them down until they split. The skin on the hands was dry and pale, with this faint reddish tint at the knuckles. They didn't move, not even a twitch. Every bit of the easy barb was drained out of me. My spine locked. The air in the clean room tasted suddenly thin. I stood in the doorway, one foot in garbage stench, one in citrus-clean living room, staring like an idiot. I couldn't even form a word. My brain tried out possibilities, friend, relative, cult bullshit, but none of them fit. Who sits in your dark living room in a robe with their head bowed like some fucked up saint statue? "What's up?" Matt's voice said behind me. I jumped. I hadn't heard him come down the hall. He was just there, stepping around me with 2 beers in his hands like I hadn't frozen. "Who the fuck is that?" I blurted, not taking my eyes off the robed figure. Matt glanced at it, then back at me, eyebrows up. "Whoa, done? Rude. That's my roommate." "Your roommate?" I looked at him. "Since when do you have a roommate?" "Not long," he said. He moved into the room like it was the most normal thing in the world, dropped onto the couch, set the bottles down. "Come on, seat." The figure didn't move. It didn't acknowledge us. It just sat there, head bowed, hands limp on the armrests. "You serious?" I asked, my voice scraping. "About having a roommate?" He snorted. "You think I stage a haunted house just for you?" He patted the couch cushion. "Relax." I stayed near the doorway. That invisible line felt real now. Like stepping fully into the room would mean stepping into something's territory. The back of my neck prickled. I forced myself to look around, anywhere but the armchair. The room was too tidy, even for Matt, even for his pre-disappearance standards. On the shelf above the TV, I noticed a picture of Matt and Abigail in hospital gowns, both making faces at the camera. A date scribbled in the corner. Recent. Next to it, tucked into the frame, another sticky note. Same handwriting as the one in the hall. "If you're scared, just keep your eyes closed while you talk to him." The smiley face looked wrong, like it had been added later, the circle too tight, the line too deep. Matt followed my gaze. "He's not that bad once you get to know him." "Why is your roommate dressed like, whatever that is?" "He's religious," Matt said lightly. "Religious?" I repeated. "You used to fall asleep during Christmas Mass." He shrugged. "People change." The silence that followed wasn't the comfortable kind. The TV was off. The street noise from outside was muffled by thick curtains. I could hear the hum of the fridge down the hall, and under it, something else. A slow, barely there rasp like old fabric sliding against itself when someone breathes. I realized it was the robed figure, breathing. "So how have you been?" Matt asked. He popped his beer open with a bottle opener, like we were just 2 buddies catching up after work. Fine, I said automatically. My eyes kept darting back to the armchair. Work. Same shit. They hired that new guy, and he already screwed up the monthly report. Matt made a face. Of course he did. They never listen to me when I say we need someone who can actually read. We, huh? You still planning on coming back? I tried to keep my tone light. He took a long sip. Depends. On what? I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know. He looked over at the robed figure. For the first time, his face softened in this weird, reverent way. On what he says, every hair on my arm stood up. You're kidding, I said. He smiled faintly. You'll see. When he wakes up, I'll introduce you. He's asleep. I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. Kind of. It's complicated. The figure hadn't moved. If I stared hard enough, I could see that faint rise and fall under the robe. Or maybe I just imagined it. I set my beer down on the TV stand without opening it. Matt, I'm gonna be real with you. This is fucking weird. Your hallway looks like a landfill. There's some guy in a Halloween costume sitting in your living room, and you're talking like you joined a cult. Matt's jaw tightened. You don't have to be an asshole about it. You disappeared without a word. I shot back. People were worried. And now I'm here, and I feel like I walked into one of those Reddit stories where everybody dies at the end. He laughed, but it was hollow. Not everyone dies. I stared at him. Okay, that's not better. The robed figure's fingers flexed once. Just a tiny curl of two long, yellowish nails against the fabric of the armrest. My stomach did a slow roll. Look, I said, my voice dropping. I appreciate the invite. Really, but I got shit to do tomorrow and I... Bullshit, Matt cut in. You literally told me nothing. I'm free back at the bar. I remembered something. What? He snapped. I searched for a lie and came up empty. I don't feel comfortable here. He stared at me. For a second, he went completely still, beer bottle halfway to his mouth. His eyes were darker in the lamplight. The joking Matt I knew slid off his face like water. What's wrong? He asked quietly. I gestured helplessly to the immaculate room, to the doorway open on bags of reeking trash, to the robed thing pretending to be furniture. All of this, man. You act like it's normal. It's not. He frowned, genuinely confused. The place is clean. The place out there looks like a biohazard, I said. You can't even open your fridge properly. He blinked, like he was trying to see it. It's fine. It has to be like that. I thought of the sticky note. Kitchen and hallway must stay filthy. No exceptions. What? I asked. His eyes flickered toward the armchair, then back. Just us. And him. My voice shook despite my best effort. You can't seriously expect me to pretend that's not. For fuck's sake, Matt. That's not a normal roommate. I told you. He's an angel, he said. You're being disrespectful. I laughed, a sharp, disbelieving bark. An angel. That thing. The fingers curled again. Slow, deliberate. Matt's hand tightened around the bottle. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, you're right. I snapped. Because my friend went missing, then came back with a garbage mountain and a robed freak sitting in his living room. And he's telling me it's an angel. You're right. I don't know what the fuck is going on. The angel, if that's what he wanted to call it, didn't move. But the air in the room felt heavier, like pressure building before a storm. Matt stood up abruptly, set his bottle down with a click. We were the same height, but in that moment he felt taller. If you want to go, he said, voice flat. Nobody's keeping you. Relief surged so hard I almost staggered. Thank you, I said. I'm sorry, this is too much right now. I turned toward the hallway. The smell of trash wafted in, familiar now in a way that made my stomach hurt. I got 3 steps. Something slammed into the side of my face with a sickening, wet crack. The world spun, floor jumping up at me. My teeth rattled, and hot blood filled my mouth so fast I choked on it. I didn't even see the swing. 1 second I was walking, the next there was pain, and the room turned into a blur of ceiling and wall and lamp. My shoulder hit the floor. My head bounced. I heard my own groan like it was coming from someone else. Fuck, Matt's voice said somewhere above me, strained. Fuck, I'm sorry, done. I'm so fucking sorry. But you started to leave, and my vision lurched in and out. I turned my head, and a bolt of agony shot through my nose. Warm blood poured down over my lips and chin, dripping onto the polished floor. Two shapes of white glinted near my hand. Teeth my brain supplied dully. There was a wrench on the floor beside me. Heavy, dark metal. Matt's hand still loosely wrapped around it. Dan, he said, voice shaky but determined. I'm sorry. This is the angel's request. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the darkness rushed in too fast. When I came back, everything was too bright. White tiles, harsh light, the smell of bleach and copper. My head, buzzed like a swarm of insects, lived under my skull. I tried to move, and pain blossomed across my face and ribs, a nasty, hot blooming that made my stomach flip. Done? His voice echoed, weirdly, like we were underwater. I blinked until the world resolved. I was on the floor, slumped awkwardly against a radiator. My hands were behind me, wrists tied to the pipe with something rough and tight. My legs were numb. The tile under me was cold, slick in spots where my blood had dried and smeared. Matt sat on the edge of the bathtub, elbows on his knees, staring at me. The wrench was gone. Instead, he held a roll of duct tape like it was a stress ball. There was a smear of my blood across his cheek. Behind him, in the bathroom doorway, stood the robed figure. It filled the frame. The bathroom light threw harsh shadows into the folds of the hood. The robe hung all the way down. I still couldn't see its feet. The hood was low, but from this angle, I could see a slice of what was underneath it, a neck if you could call it that. The skin was the color of dried blood, dark red with blackish veins like cracks in rock. It looked wrong. Wrong texture, wrong color, wrong shape. It didn't move. The smell in the small room was concentrated, a cocktail of bleach, iron, and something else that made my throat want to close. Old Earth. Vet Fur. A barn in winter layered over a hospital. Dan, Matt said again, as if I hadn't heard. Do you know the Bible well? I stared at him through puffy eyes. When I tried to breathe through my nose, fire lanced up between my eyebrows. Blood bubbled in my throat when I spoke. What the fuck did you do? He winced. He said you'd try to leave. I thought. He squeezed the tape hard. Never mind. It doesn't matter now. I tugged at the rope around my wrists. It burned my skin, but the knot didn't budge. The pipe rattled dead cold. Abraham, Matt said like we were back at the bar, and he just picked a random trivia topic. Do you know his story? I glared at him. Red dots floated in my vision. I know you. Hit me in the face with a wrench. He ignored that. God told Abraham to sacrifice his son. Do you know that part? What does that have to do with anything? My voice cracked. It was a test, he said. A test of obedience. Abraham took his son up the mountain, built an altar, tied him up. He was ready to do it. And at the last second, God stopped him. He looked down at the tape, turning it in his hands. That's the part people remember. The dramatic stop. I swallowed blood. It tasted metallic and thick. You're not. Abraham. He looked up at the figure in the doorway. Its head was tilted slightly now, as if it were listening. I asked him that too, Matt said softly. Why me? I'm nobody. I drink too much. I watch porn. I ghost my friends. A humorless laugh. But he chose me anyway. You're not making sense. He closed his eyes for a moment, like collecting himself. When he opened them, there was a clarity there that scared me more than the wrench had. Abigail, he said, you remember what the doctors said? Last time I talked to you at work. They said it didn't look good, I muttered. It felt like we were suddenly having two conversations layered on top of each other. Stage 4, he said quietly. Metastatic. I Googled words I didn't even know how to pronounce. The night they told us there was nothing more they could do, I sat in the hospital chapel and asked God, if you're real, if you're anything at all, you can have whatever you want. Just don't take her. I thought about all the times we joked about religion, how we made fun of the old guys handing out flyers on the street. It didn't fit with him. None of this fit. He glanced at the robed figure. It still hadn't moved. but the fabric near its chest rose and fell with those long, slow breaths. He came to me the next night, Matt said. Right here. I was drunk. I thought I was dreaming. The living room was red, like it is now. Red. I hadn't noticed in the bathroom, but the light spilling in from the hall had a warm tint to it, like candlelight bouncing off something dark. He told me, Matt continued, that Abigail would live if I proved my devotion, if I gave him offerings, simple ones at first, bread, wine, meat. His lips twitched. I thought I lost my mind. Then her blood work started changing. Remission happens, I rasped. Spontaneous, it's rare, but it wasn't just remission, he snapped. The doctors said it themselves. They said there was no medical explanation. They asked if she'd joined some experimental trial without telling them. Tumors don't just shrink like that overnight. My heart thudded painfully. He could be lying. He could be delirious. But I remembered the photo on the shelf. Abigail's face flushed with real color, hair growing back in soft fuzz, grinning at the camera. You think that thing did it? I nodded weakly toward the doorway. He followed my gaze. For a heartbeat, the skin on his face rearranged into something like awe. I know he did. That's not an angel, Matt. You don't know what angels look like, he said. I didn't either. I had all those Hallmark images in my head. Wings, halos, white teeth. He shook his head. That's not how messengers of God look. They're terrifying. Every story starts with, do not be afraid, because people fucking piss themselves when they see them. The robed figure's hands tightened on the armrests. The nails scraped softly against the fabric. My stomach clenched. What offerings? I asked through clenched teeth. What did you give him? Animals, he said. Food. Things I could buy, things I could find. It wasn't enough. He healed her a little, then stopped. He said his voice dropped. He said I hadn't finished Abraham's story. Jesus Christ, I whispered. Don't say his name like that. Matt snapped, sudden violence in his tone. You're going to kill me, I said. Saying it out loud made the room tilt. You're seriously going to murder your friend because a thing in a robe told you to. I'm not going to kill you, he said, almost offended. That's the whole point. Abraham didn't kill his son. He showed God he was willing. God supplied the sacrifice. I stared. You think God is going to what? Jump in and stop you with a ram in the bushes. His eyes shone. I think he's going to save you at the last second. If I prove I'm obedient. If he doesn't, I asked. Matt glanced at the figure. He will. You're insane, I said. There is no heat behind it, just raw, exhausted certainty. I have proof, he insisted. Abigail is my proof. Abigail is sick, I said. She needs doctors, not whatever the fuck this is. He went very quiet. I know you're scared, he said eventually, voice softening. I'd be scared too, but you don't have to be. He likes you. I laughed or tried to. It came out a wet cough. Great. I'm honored. He said your name, Matt murmured. The first time he came. He said Daniel. His eyes unfocused like he was replaying it. I didn't tell you that before. I didn't want to freak you out. Congratulations. I spat blood onto the tile. Mission accomplished. For a second, something like guilt flickered across his face. He looked at my wrists, the rope chafing, the dried blood crusting under my nose. His mouth tightened. I have to prepare the altar, he said. Don't pull the pipe. You'll hurt yourself. He stood up, wiping his bloody hands on his jeans, and walked past the robed figure. As he passed it, his shoulder brushed its sleeve. The fabric didn't move like normal cloth. It flowed, almost liquid. He flinched but kept going. The angel didn't turn its hidden head, but as Matt's footsteps faded, I heard it breathe in. Long, slow. The room got colder. They left me there, tied to the radiator. Tom did that rubber band thing. Sometimes the second hand on Matt's cheap wall clock seemed to jerk too fast. Sometimes it felt like it wasn't moving at all. My hands went from tingling to numb. My face throbbed in time with my heartbeat. Blood dried on my lips, tight when I tried to speak. I yanked on the pipe in short, sharp jerks, hoping something would give. The pipe clanged against the wall, rusty but solid. The rope dug deeper. My shoulders screamed. "Don't," a voice said. "Not Matt." I froze. The robed figure filled the doorway. At some point, it had moved closer. Its hooded head was tilted as if it were considering me. My mouth went dry. Get the fuck away from me." It didn't respond. The only sound was its breath. That steady, horrible rasp. Against my will, my eyes went to its hands. The skin wasn't just pale. There were patches where it looked almost translucent, veins dark beneath. The fingers flexed once, each joint moving with a faint cracking sound like branches in winter. In my head, sudden and unwanted, flashed that sticky note on the shelf. "If you're scared, just keep your eyes closed while you talk to him." I squeezed my eyes shut. The smell shifted immediately. It was like something leaned in. Hot, damp air washed over my face, saturated with decay and an almost sweet note that made my stomach lurch. "Daniel," it whispered. The voice was wrong. It wasn't male or female. It wasn't echoing or booming. It was flat and dry and close to my ear, like someone had pressed their lips right to my skin. It scratched at my eardrum. I snapped my eyes open with a strangled sound. I was alone in the bathroom. The doorway was empty. I started shaking so hard my teeth chattered. The logical part of my brain said I was concussed, hallucinating, delirious from pain. The rest of me didn't care. I wanted out. I wanted a boring Saturday with laundry and coffee and maybe a hangover. I kicked at the bathtub. I rocked my body, trying to create enough momentum to yank the pipe from the wall. The metal groaned, but held. "Done." Matt's voice again. Calm. Too calm. He stood in the doorway now, the robed figure behind him like a shadow. He held the wrench in one hand and something long and wrapped in cloth in the other. I stopped struggling. "I told you not to do that," he said. "You're gonna break your wrists." "Untie me," I whispered. My throat hurt. "Please." He sighed. "I am." He stepped forward, crouched behind me, fingers working at the knots. The brush of his hands on my skin felt surreal. This was the same guy who'd helped me move my couch up 3 flights of stairs while we bitched about it. The same guy who'd cried on my shoulder in the hospital waiting room. Now tying and untying knots so he could drag me to an altar. The rope fell away. Pins and needles shot down my arms. Before I could think, I surged to my feet and slammed backward. He hadn't expected it. He stumbled, crashed into the tub, dropped the wrapped object. It clattered, a dull metal sound under the cloth. I didn't wait. My legs were rubber, but adrenaline lit them on fire. I bolted past the robed figure. For a second, as I squeezed by, I felt the edge of the robe brush my bare forearm. It was cold, not fabric in an air-conditioned room cold, cemetery stone in winter. It seared my skin with instant goosebumps. I burst into the hallway, shoes sliding on some unidentifiable goo. The smell hit me like a wall again. I didn't care. I skidded, caught myself on a stack of bags, and sprinted toward the front door. The living room door was half open as I passed. I flicked a glance inside and almost slipped again. The walls were red, not painted, smeared, poulet, lines drawn in some thick, dark substance that could only be one thing. Symbols I didn't recognize crisscrossed the plaster. Candles burned on every flat surface, wax dripping down like frozen tears. Chains hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly from some leftover motion. On the couch, my backpack sat neatly. The zipper closed, strap tucked under like someone had placed it there carefully. My phone was in that bag. I didn't stop. I hit the front door shoulder first. The handle didn't turn. It jerked, then stuck like it was welded. I threw my weight against it, kicked it, smashed my bloody fist into it. It didn't move an inch. Behind me, I heard Matt grunting, climbing out of the tub. The scrape of his shoes on tile. The bathroom door banging open. "Dan," he shouted, "don't make this harder." I spun away from the locked door and launched myself into the living room. The air in there was suffocating, thick with the smell of hot wax and copper. The candles flickered violently as I stumbled in. I dove for the couch, grabbed my bag, yanked the zipper so hard it broke. My phone slid out in a blur of receipts and junk. My fingers slipped on blood. I clutched it like a lifeline and smashed the emergency call icon with my thumb. "Matt," a voice said from nowhere and everywhere at once. Not his, not mine, not human. He stopped in the doorway. I didn't care what it said. I pressed the phone to my ear. 911. "What's your emergent?" "Help," I gasped. "He's trying to." Matt slammed into me. The phone flew from my hand, skidding across the floor. I heard the dispatcher's small voice, distant, tinny. "Hello? Sir, are you?" Matt's fist connected with my cheekbone. White light exploded behind my eyes. I tasted blood again. "Don't you get it?" He screamed, voice ragged. "He was going to save you, Dan. He was going to stop me. You just had to trust him." I tried to curl up, shield my head, but he was wild now. He kicked my side, hard enough that something cracked. He was crying as he did it, tears mixing with the sweat and blood on his face. "Shut up," I wheezed. "I saw you at the bar and I knew." He shouted over me. "I knew it was a sign. Out of everyone, he picked you. You should be honored, you ungrateful son of a bitch." A searing pain bloomed in my arm. For a second, I didn't understand it. I thought he'd hit me with the wrench again. Then I saw the handle of a knife jutting from my flesh, blood soaking through my sleeve. I screamed. It came out hoarse and ragged, tearing my throat. Matt yanked the knife free. Blood sprayed. He grabbed my ankles and started dragging me. "Stop," I croaked. "Matt, please." He didn't answer. His breath came in harsh grunts. The living room spun, candles smearing into lines of light as he pulled me toward the hall. My phone lay face up near the kitchen doorway, screen still lit. I heard the distant voice. "Sir, if you can hear me, we have your location. Officers are on there. Help." I rasped as my fingers brushed the edge of it. "Help me." Matt kicked it away. "God and his angels are the only ones who can help you," he shouted. "They're already here." He dragged me past the sticky note on the wall. "Angel procedure, do not forget." As I slid by, my shoulder knocked it loose. It fluttered down, landing face up beside my head. "If he starts humming, leave the apartment." Immediately, from somewhere behind us, deep in the living room, I heard it. A low sound, almost too quiet to catch at first. A vibration more than a note, like someone humming down in their chest, mouth closed. It crawled along my spine. Matt froze. For a second, I thought he'd listened to his own rule, that he'd drop me and bolt. He tightened his grip on my ankles instead. "We don't have time," he muttered. "We don't have time for you to be stubborn." He dragged me toward the bedroom. The smell hit me before we crossed the threshold. Rot, damp, sweat, incense burned far too long, all layered together until it felt like breathing through a wet rag. The room was dark except for candles burning in a ring on the floor. The bed was pushed aside. In its place was a crude platform made of pallets and covered with a white sheet stained brown in places. The walls were covered in more symbols, more streaks. On the far wall, nailed at an angle, was a sheep's head. Its eyes were gone. The sockets were black holes, dried and shrunken. Flies crawled lazily over it. The jaw hung open, teeth bared in a horrible mockery of a grin. I stared at it, mind slipping. We were in the middle of the city. There were no farms nearby, no fields, no barns. Where did he get a sheep? The humming grew louder. It wasn't coming from Matt. The white-robed figure glided into the room. I say glided because I didn't see its feet move. The robe brushed the floor, dragging in little arcs. The candles flickered as it passed, wax rippling. It stopped near the makeshift altar, hood turned toward us. Matt let go of my legs and straightened up, knife in hand. His chest rose and fell fast. "And now," he said, voice trembling, "God will save you." He raised the knife. The humming filled my head. It vibrated in my bones. My teeth buzzed. The room wavered in and out of focus. My heart hammered so loud it drowned out everything else. "Please," I whispered. I didn't know who I was talking to anymore. The knife came down. Fire exploded in my side. It wasn't the neat, sharp pain movie show. It was messy, tearing, hot. I screamed. The sound ripped out of me, animal and broken. Matt ripped the knife free. Blood poured out in a hot flood. The room tilted wildly. Somewhere far away, someone pounded on a door. "Police!" a muffled voice shouted. "Open up! Police!" Matt's head snapped toward the hallway. The humming cut off abruptly. For one blessed second, there was only the sound of my own ragged breathing and the blood pounding in my ears. Then the front door splintered. Shouts, heavy boots, hands where I can see them. Matt roared a wild, wordless sound. He bolted out of the bedroom, knife still in his hand. I lay on the floor, staring at the sheep's head. One of the flies took off and landed on my cheek. I didn't have the strength to brush it away. Gunshots echoed down the hallway. 1, 2, 3. Someone screamed. I couldn't tell if it was Matt or an officer. A body hit the floor with a dull, final thud. "Clear! Clear!" More shouting. "Ambulance! We need a medic in here now!" A figure burst into the bedroom. A cop in a dark uniform, face pale, eyes wide. His gaze snapped from the candles to the symbols to me leaking out on the floor. "Jesus," he breathed. Then, louder, "I've got one. He's alive." He dropped to his knees beside me, hands pressing against my side. Pain flared white hot. I screamed again, or tried to. It came out as a wet hiss. "Stay with me, okay?" he said. His voice was steady but too fast. "Stay with me. What's your name?" My tongue felt thick. "Dan," I managed. "Okay, done. I'm Officer Reyes. You're gonna be okay. We've got you." His hand was slick with my blood. He looked at my face, then at the sheep's head. His jaw clenched. "What the fuck happened here?" I tried to answer, but the room was dimming at the edges. He shouted something over his shoulder. Footsteps pounded away. The candles flickered. That's when I saw it. Not in the doorway, not across the room. Right next to me, the edge of a white robe drifted into my line of sight, him dirty and frayed. There were dark stains on it, some old, some fresh. Mud clung to the cloth, thick and cracked. The robe pooled around something that wasn't a boot or a shoe. 2 legs. They were wrong. Too thick, jointed backwards, covered in coarse, dark hair. The skin, or hide, whatever it was, shone dully under the candlelight. Instead of feet, there were hooves. Black, glossy, cloven. They clicked softly on the wooden floor as it shifted its weight. I couldn't breathe. The cops were still shouting in the other room. I could hear Reyes talking into his radio, calling for the ambulance, rattling off my vitals as best he could. None of them reacted. None of them turned their heads. None of them saw what was standing over me. The robe bent. I felt hot breath against my ear, fetid and sweet like rotten summer. When it spoke, its lips didn't touch my skin, but it felt like they did. "We'll meet again," it whispered. My whole body tried to jerk away, but I couldn't move. The voice slid under my skin. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It went straight into the part of my brain that knows your prey. The smell almost made me throw up. Blood, yes, thick and coppery. But underneath it, something like wet hay and old bones and incense burned in a closed room for years. Something ancient. "I've taken quite a liking to you," it murmured. Such a stubborn little lamb. Tears leaked from the corners of my eyes without my permission. The world narrowed down to the sound of my own pulse, the pressure of Reyes's hands on my side, and the thing's voice in my ear. Until then, it said softly, "Take care of yourself." The humming started again, softer now, almost like a lullaby. My vision went black. When I woke up, everything was too quiet. No humming, no shouting, no candes. Just the slow beep-beep of a monitor and the whisper of air moving through vents. Hospital light has its own color. Too white, too clean, too unforgiving. It makes you feel like a corpse that hasn't realized it's dead yet. I blinked up at the ceiling. Tiles, fluorescent panels, a sprinkler head. For a second, my brain tried to place it as Matt's bathroom ceiling. Then the stiffness in my side flared, and the fog cleared. I was alive. Pain anchored me. A deep, dull ache in my ribs, sharper sting along my arm, throbbing in my face. My mouth tasted like a chemical swamp. My nose felt too big, bandage stuffed. I tried to move, and some machine beeped faster. "Hey," a voice said. "Hey, he's up." A shape shifted into my field of vision. A nurse, hair pulled back tight, tired eyes behind glasses. She pressed something on the monitor and smiled down at me. The smile didn't reach her eyes. "Can you hear me?" she asked. I nodded. "Tiny movement." "Don't try to talk yet," she said. "Your throat took some damage." "Here." She reached for a small cup and dabbed my lips with a sponge soaked in water. It was like tasting heaven and chlorine at the same time. "You gave everyone quite a scare," she said. "You've been in and out for a couple days." Days. The word floated there, unmoored. I tried to chase it, got lost in the pain. Where I croaked anyway. It hurt, but I needed to. "You're at St. Mary's," she said. "You had surgery. They stabilized you. You lost a lot of blood, but you're not bleeding internally anymore." St. Mary's. The same hospital as Abigail. Of course. My heart stumbled. "Matt," I rasped. The nurse's mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'll let the detectives know you're awake," she said. "They've been waiting to talk to you." She slipped out of the room, leaving me with the beeping in my own thoughts, which felt like a bag of broken glass. Images flashed, jarring and out of order. Matt's grin at the bar, the sticky note on the wall, the wrench, the sheep's head, hooves clicking on wood, the sound of the front door splintering, the angel whispering into my ear. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to push it all away. Behind my lids, I saw red walls. "Done?" This voice I recognized. I opened my eyes again. A man in a cheap suit stood near the door, a woman next to him. The man had that permanent squint older cops get from being outside too much. The woman's hair was in a braid over one shoulder, her expression unreadable. "I'm Detective Collins," the man said. "This is Detective Varela. Mind if we ask you a few questions?" I let out a brittle laugh that hurt my ribs. "You're already in the room." He cracked a tiny smile at that, then sobered. "We can come back if..." "No," I said. "Let's get it over with." He nodded and pulled a small notebook from his pocket. Varela stayed quiet, eyes on me, cataloging. "You remember what happened at your friend's apartment?" Collins asked. I swallowed. My throat scraped. "Some of it. Take your time." I tried. I really did. I told him about the bar as best I could. About Matt walking in like nothing was wrong, the talk about Abigail, the invite. Collins interrupted occasionally to clarify a detail, time, place, how much we'd had to drink. Varela wrote everything down, nail tapping her pen when I paused too long. When I got to the apartment, my voice got thinner. I told him about the trash, the smell, the sticky notes. I altered the words a bit. He had these weird rules taped up, I said. Something about knocking before entering the living room. Not using the left hand, keeping the kitchen dirty. Collins raised an eyebrow. Like a ritual? Like he'd lost his mind, I said. He kept talking about an angel. When I tried to describe the figure in the robe, my tongue thickened. The words caught in my throat. How do you explain it looked like something that crawled out of a fever dream to people who weren't there? I had someone else there, I said eventually. In the living room, wearing a white robe, face covered. A person? Varela asked. Man, woman size build? I couldn't see, I said. It was just this shape, wrapped up. Hands were... I cut myself off before I said wrong. I couldn't see their face. Could you tell if they were armed? Collins asked. I didn't see any weapon, I said. He kept calling him his roommate. Then later, an angel. And this roommate participated in the assault? He pressed. Hit you, stabbed you, anything like that? I hesitated. No, I admitted. Matt did that. The detectives exchanged a quick look. Collins flipped a page. You told the responding officers there was someone else in the apartment, he said carefully. They did a sweep. Twice. Nobody else was there. No second pair of footprints. No extra toothbrush. No men's or women's clothes that weren't his. The only prints in the blood besides yours were his and the officers. He doesn't leave footprints. I muttered before I could stop myself. What was that? Collins asked. Nothing. I stared at the ceiling. We recovered several knives, a wrench with your blood on it, and what appears to be animal remains, Varela said, checking her notes. Her voice was flatter than his. We'll need you to confirm what's his and what's not when you're able. Is he? I swallowed. Is Matt deceased? Collins said. No sugar quating. He charged at the officers with a knife, ignored repeated commands to drop it. They fired. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The words hung there. I thought I'd feel relief, anger, something hot and clean. Instead, I just felt tired, like all the air had leaked out of the room at once. He was talking about Abraham, I said, the Bible story, sacrificing his son. He thought God would stop him at the last second. Collins scribbled something down. Has he ever had any history of mental illness that you knew of? No, I said. He was eccentric, but not the kind of guy who would tie his best friend to a radiator and build an altar in his bedroom. Varela's gaze softened, just a fraction. You don't have to explain his actions, Mr. Hale, she said quietly. That's not on you. I wanted to tell her that Matt wasn't just actions to me, that there were 9 years of stupid jokes and late-night gaming sessions and hospital coffee runs between us, that the guy who stabbed me was the same one who'd held on my shoulder the night my own dad died and said nothing because there was nothing to say. Instead, I asked his sister. They looked at each other again. This time, a glance meant something else. Abigail is still hospitalized, Collins said. Last I heard, she was stable. The doctors were optimistic about her latest tests. Optimistic. Miraculous response. I heard Matt's voice saying those exact words at the bar. Do they know? I asked. About what he was doing? They know he died, Varela said. We're not going to tell a chemo patient that her brother tried to sacrifice his friend to please an angel. That's above our pay grade. She tried to make a joke. It didn't land. Look, Collins said, we're going to need a formal statement when you're stronger. For now, this is enough. He closed the notebook. We're glad you're alive, Dan. If those officers hadn't gotten there when they did, he left the sentence hanging. Yeah, if they hadn't. After they left, the nurse came back, fussed with my drip, told me something about pain management and physical therapy that slid right out of my head. A doctor appeared and disappeared. People poked and prodded and spoke in low voices around my bed. Nobody mentioned the white robe. Nobody mentioned hooves. Maybe they thought cult and psychotic break and copycat religious killing, but no one said it in front of me. They treated me like a victim, like I'd stumbled into someone else's madness and barely crawled out. In my head, I saw that sticky note on the wall again. Angel procedure, do not forget. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I drifted off, I jerked awake, heart racing, convinced I'd hear humming. The monitor tackled on me, beeping faster when I panicked. A nurse poked her head in twice to check on me. The third time, I pretended to be asleep. I couldn't stand one more pitying look. Around 2 a.m, the ward got quiet. Hospital quiet is different from normal quiet. There's always some distant sound. A cart rolling, someone vomiting, a baby crying 3 floors down. But between those, there are long stretches where it feels like the entire building is holding its breath. I stared at the ceiling, listening. Somewhere, a TV played an infomercial. A call bell chimed. A nurse laughed softly. Then, faintly from the corridor outside my room, I heard it. Talp. Pause. Talp. Like knuckles on a door. Knocked twice before entering the living room after dark. My chest tightened so hard the monitor screamed. I mashed the call button without thinking. A nurse hurried in, ponytail swinging. What's wrong? Did someone knock? I croaked. She glanced back at the door, then at me. No, you're probably hearing the 4 pump. It clicks sometimes. She checked the monitor, adjusted it, put a hand on my shoulder. You're safe here, okay? Try to sleep. Safe here. She left. The door clicked shut. The room dimmed again. I stared at the door until my eyes burned. Every squeak of a wheel, every footstep, every distant cough turned into hooves in my head. Sometime around dawn, exhausted, I drifted off despite myself. I woke to sunlight pushing through the blinds, and the sound of someone talking. No, I get it, but he's still not ready for visitors. The nurse again, arguing with someone in the hallway. A second voice replied, too low for me to make out the words. It's not my call, she said. You can ask the doctor on rounds. Silence. Then softer. I'm sorry. Really, he needs rest. Footsteps moved away. A moment later, something slid under my door. I heard the faint whisper of paper on linoleum. I stared at the bottom of the door for a good minute, my heart creeping up my throat. Finally, curiosity won out over fear. Slowly, gritting my teeth against the pain, I reached for the bed controls and raised the head. Then I swung my legs over the side. The room tilted. Machines beeped disapprovingly. I ignored them. When my feet hit the floor, cold shot up my calves. I shuffled to the door, dragging the 4-pole with me. A yellow square of paper lay just inside. I stopped. For a second, I thought my brain was doing that thing where it fills in gaps with what it expects, because it looked exactly like the sticky notes at Matt's place. Same cheap brand, same color, same size, corners slightly curled. My hand shook as I picked it up. The handwriting was the same too. Messy all caps, letters leaning too much to one side. Don't forget. Underneath, 3 words. We're not done. My vision tunneled. The room shrank. I stared at the note until the lines blurred. Mr. Hale. I flinched. The nurse stood in the doorway now, eyes wide at finding me out of bed. What are you doing? She fussed. You can't. Did someone just put this under my door? I cut in, holding up the note. My voice sounded too high, too thin. She frowned. I told you, no visitors. The detective said they'd check in later, but they haven't. I'm not talking about them. I snapped. Someone slid this under my door just now. You must have seen them. She took the sticky from my hand, squinted at it. Her brow furrowed. Is this your handwriting? Does it look like mine? I demanded. She shrugged, thrown. Maybe someone left it earlier. Housekeeping, maybe. Nobody leaves notes that say we're not done by accident, I said. She looked genuinely unnerved now, which did nothing for my heartbeat. I'll, check with the staff, she said. You should really get back in bed. I let her herd me back, mostly because my legs were about to give out. She adjusted my blankets, checked my drip, left with the note still in her hand. I stared at the door again. We're not done. I'm not done. We, plural. Matt had written it, I told myself. He must have. Maybe he scribbled it days ago, and it somehow found its way here. Maybe I was confusing handwriting because I've been staring at it in my head for hours. Except Matt was lying in a cold drawer in the hospital morgue now. He didn't have pockets anymore, or sticky notes, or a hand to write with. Coincidence, I muttered. It sounded hollow. Later that day, a psych eval showed up. He introduced himself as Dr. Keller. Mid-40s, tie slightly crooked, practiced mild smile. He pulled up a chair, sat a polite distance from my bed, and asked if it was all right if he took some notes. You think I'm crazy, I said. I think you've been through a serious trauma, he replied. And that violent trauma can cause all sorts of symptoms. Flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, nightmares, perceptual disturbances. My job is to help distinguish between those and something more persistent. Perceptual disturbances, I echoed. You mean seeing things? Among other things. He folded his hands. The officer's report mentions that you insisted there was something else in the apartment with you. Something that wasn't Matt. I stared at the blanket, picking at a loose thread. There was. Can you describe it for me? I did. Not everything. I left out the hooves. I left out the whisper. I stuck to the basic facts. White robe. Hood. No visible face. Hands. Matt calling it an angel. The sticky notes. He listened, nodding. You know why the officers didn't find anyone else in the apartment, right? Because it left, I said. Ow, Keller asked gently. The officers were on scene within minutes of her 911 call. The building has cameras on the main entrance. No one else came in or out of the building except your neighbors. We checked. It doesn't use doors. I snapped, angrier than I meant. It doesn't need to. He scribbled something down. So you're saying it's what exactly? I hesitated. The word angel stuck in my throat. Not human, I said finally. Not right. Do you have a history of seeing things other people don't? He asked. Hearing things? Any previous diagnoses of PTSD, psychosis, anything like that? Nothing, I said. I get hangovers and heartburn and existential dread like everyone else. He smiled faintly. Fair enough. He flipped a page. You mentioned sticky notes. Rules. I nodded. He had a whole list. Knock twice before entering. Don't look under the robe. Keep the hallway dirty. That kind of thing. Rules can be a way for people in crisis to try to impose structure on chaos, Keller said. Rituals give the illusion of control when you feel you have none. It's common in OCD, in certain psychoses, in grief. What about rules somebody else gives you? I asked. What do you call it when you follow rules written by something that isn't there? He met my eyes. Delusion. I laughed, short and bitter. So that's what you think this is? A big, bloody delusion. I think your brain is trying to make sense of something horrific, he said. You were assaulted by someone you trusted. You nearly died. It's not unusual for people in your position to assign meaning, to personify their fear, to create monsters. It whispered to me, I said quietly. At the end, in the bedroom before I passed out. The officers didn't write that down, did they? You check his notes. They wrote that you said it's still here before losing consciousness. They assumed you meant your assailant. I meant the angel, I said. The word came out twisted. Or whatever it is. Keller scratched something on his pad. Have you seen it since? The note under the door flashed in my mind. I shook my head. Have you heard it? He pressed. Felt its presence in any way outside the context of dreams? What? I asked. If I say yes, do I get a padded room instead of a discharge? He didn't flinch. If you say yes, we can talk about medications that might help. If you say no, we keep monitoring. Either way, the goal is to keep you safe. Safe. There was again. That word everyone kept using like it meant anything anymore. I looked at him, at the bland art on the wall behind him, at the plastic picture on my bedside table, at the for my arm. I thought about hooves clicking on wood that the officers never heard, about rules that matched what I'd seen, about a kid in a hospital bed upstairs somewhere, suddenly getting better for no medical reason. No, primer lit. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right, well, the good news is you're physically stabilizing. Psychologically, I'd classify you as acute stress response for now. We'll keep an eye on it. You'll get some referrals when you're discharged, and I strongly suggest you follow up. Trauma sits in the body. If you ignore it, it finds ways to make you notice. I almost asked him if he believed in angels, in anything beyond blood and neurons misfiring. But I didn't. I let him leave with his notebook half full. Days blurred. They moved me from ICU to a regular room. Physical therapy came by and made me walk laps, my four-pole rattling, my side burning. Abigail's floor was 2 levels up. I found out by accident when a volunteer pushed me onto the wrong elevator. I didn't see her. I thought about going, rolling up there in my hospital gown, asking the nurses to let me see her, telling her brother died, trying to earn a miracle. Every time I pictured her face, paler than in the photo now, probably, but still alive, I stopped. Would I even say, hey, Abby, your angel's a psychopath and your brother's dead, but congrats on the shrinking tumors? I stayed away. Weird things kept happening. Once, during a storm, the power flickered. The lights went out for a full 5 seconds, long enough for the generators to kick in. Emergency lights casting everything in this sickly red glow. In that brief red world, I heard it humming, low and steady, like a song it only knew one verse of, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. Then the lights came back, the monitors restarted, and the nurse in the hall cursed about having to reset the pumps. Nobody else reacted. Nobody else heard a damn thing. Another time, a cleaner rolled in a cart stacked with fresh linens and supplies. On top of the pile sat a pack of sticky notes. Yellow, cheap, same brand. I watched them like you'd watch a snake. The cleaner noticed and chuckled. We're trying to go paperless, but people still love their sticky notes. Yeah, I muttered. Some of them more than others. My discharge date came faster than I expected. The surgeon signed off. Keller gave me a list of therapists and a pamphlet about coping with trauma. The nurses hugged me. Varela dropped by one last time with some information about victim compensation. Said they'd keep me updated on the case, even though there wasn't much left to investigate. What happens to the apartment? I asked as she was leaving. Sealed for now, she said. Eventually, it'll go through whatever process the landlord uses when someone dies. Auctions, probably. So someone else is going to live there, I said. Eventually, she said. That's how it works. I imagined some students signing a lease, excited about cheap rent, moving their IKEA furniture into a living room that once smelled like blood and incense. I wondered if the walls were still red under whatever scrub down the cleanup crew did. If the symbols bled through fresh paint. Did they take everything? I asked. From his room. Evidence, she said. Yeah. What? Just wondering, I said. She studied me, then reached into her pocket. You asked about notes before, she said. The nurse told us. She pulled out a little plastic bag with a yellow square inside. This the one? We're not done. I nodded. It doesn't match his usual handwriting, she said. We compared it to some stuff from his desk. Looks similar at first glance, but the pressure's different. Letter forms are slightly off. Forensics says someone tried to imitate him. I stared at the bag, at the thick strokes, the way the W dug into the paper harder than the rest. Who? I asked. That's the question, she said. Nobody on staff admits to it. Cameras in the hall don't show anyone loitering by your door yesterday morning. So either someone's lying or... She trailed off. Where your cameras don't catch everything, I said. She grimaced. Don't start sounding like him, Dan. I laughed, more harshly than I meant. Don't worry. I'm a shit prophet. She left me with a bagged note on my bedside table, as if I'd want a souvenir. The day they wheeled me out, the air outside felt too big. The sky was overcast, the city damp from overnight rain. Cars hissed by. People walked with their heads down, phones out, coffees in hand, like the world hadn't shifted sideways. My friend Zach picked me up. He hugged me carefully, swore a lot, made a joke about me milking the whole stabbing thing for sympathy dates. It was exactly what I needed and not enough at all. How are you really? He asked once we were on the road. I got stabbed by my best friend in front of an audience of one demon, I said. How do you think? He glanced at me quickly, then back at the road. They said he was talking about angels. Yeah, I said. He got one. Kind of. You don't have to talk about it, he said. We could just do dumb shit. Watch movies. I'll bring you groceries. You can yell at me for buying the wrong cereal. Normal stuff. Normal sounds good, I said. For a while I tried. I tried to sit on my couch without hearing hooves in the hallway. I tried to go to the bathroom without seeing my own radiator as a pair of cold hands around my wrists. I tried to sleep without waking up at every creak. Some nights were okay. Some nights, I woke up convinced there was someone sitting in the chair across from my bed, watching. I lasted a week before I cracked. It was late. Rain tapped at the window. I'd left the TV on low, some crime show droning in the background. The detective was saying something about ritual patterns. My side throbbed in sympathy. In the reflection on the dark TV screen, I thought I saw a shape behind me. Tall, hooded, white. I spun around. Nothing. My heart pounded. I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers and opened browser. I typed spontaneous remission and miracle and St. Mary's and Abigail and cancer into the search bar over and over until my eyes blurred. Most of what came up was garbage. News articles, blog posts, outraged threads on forums where people argued about faith and medicine. Then I found it. A short piece from a local news site, published 3 days before. Young woman's miracle, recovery baffles doctors. There was a photo. Abigail, thin but smiling, hair covered with a scarf patterned with tiny stars, standing between two nurses holding a bouquet. The caption said she was being moved out of intensive treatment into a less critical ward. The article was full of words like unexpected, Remarkable, no clear explanation. The doctors talked about rare responses and individual immune systems. The journalists called it a modern miracle in that lazy way they do when they want clicks. They mentioned her brother, too, her older brother Matthew, who has been by her side throughout her treatment, could not be reached for comment. My throat closed. I shut the article and opened another. Scrolled. Another update 2 days later. Following a tragic incident, Abigail's family has requested privacy. I didn't need to read between the lines. She knew he was dead now. Was the angel's bargain fulfilled? Was the job done? Or did it still want something from me? There was an unread email in my inbox. Subject: Incident report, case redacted. It was from Collins. Attached was a PDF. I opened it with numb fingers. The report was dry. Police prose. Times, actions, observations. Officers responding to a 911 call about a possible assault. Forced entry. Suspect armed. Shots fired. Victim located in bedroom, multiple stab wounds. Another section cataloged items seized. Knives, a wrench, chains, anonymous animal remains, religious paraphernalia. Halfway down, something stopped me. A scanned image of a page they'd pulled from a notebook at Matt's place. His handwriting slanted across the lines, messier than usual. At the top, he'd written, Angel's Rules, revised. Underneath, a numbered list. Some are the same as the sticky note. Knock twice, keep the kitchen dirty. Others I hadn't seen. 5. Don't look under the robe. Ever. 6. If he hums, leave the apartment. If you can't leave, close your eyes and let him move. 7. If your friend tries to leave, stop him. It's a test. 8. He likes lamb. My stomach turned. He likes lamb. Of course he fucking did. At the bottom, in smaller letters, a line that made my skin crawl. If he says we're done, IT means you passed. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then I dragged the email into a folder and shut the laptop. He hadn't said we're done. We're not done. I kept hearing it in my head, in Matt's voice and the thing's voice. Over and over like a taunt. The night after I read the report, I had the dream. In the dream, I was back in Matt's living room. But it wasn't like before. There was no trash in the hallway. Everything was clean, like it had been in the living room. The walls were painted white again. The candles were gone. The armchair was still there. The robe was empty. It lay draped over the chair like someone had just stepped out of it. The hood slumped. The sleeves dangled. I stood there, staring, and for a moment, hope pricked. Maybe it was over. Maybe it had left and shed its skin like a snake. Then the robe moved. It slid off the chair, slow and languid, like liquid fabric. It pooled on the floor, then rose, filling with something invisible. The hood lifted. I tried to run. My feet wouldn't move. The robe glided toward me. When it reached me, it didn't stop. It opened like a mouth. Cold, thick fabric wrapped around me. The smell hit me again, barns and blood and incense. I felt it press against my skin, hard as bone in some places, soft as meat in others. The hood covered my head, plunging me into darkness. For a moment, there was nothing but my own ragged breathing. Then a voice in the dark, right where my own inner voice should have been, said, "See, it's your turn." I woke up screaming. My neighbors pounded on the wall. Someone yelled for me to shut up. I sat there in my bed, drenched in sweat, hand pressed to my side as if the wound would open again. I didn't go back to sleep. The next morning, I made coffee with shaking hands and stared at my phone for a long time. Then I called Keller. "I lied to you," I told him when he picked up. "No hello. I have seen it since." He didn't act surprised. "In what way?" "Dreams," I said. "Notes. Humming. I know how that sounds. I don't need you to tell me it's a symptom. I know that. But knowing doesn't make it stop." He was quiet for a moment. "Are you in immediate danger?" he asked. I thought about it. The honest answer was, I don't know. The honest answer was, I feel like it's waiting just outside things, doors, dreams, my own language. "No," I said, "not immediate." "All right," he said. "We can talk about medications to help with the nightmares. EMDR for the trauma, exposure work, whatever you're comfortable with. It won't erase what happened, but might take the edges off. What if I don't want the edges off? I asked, what if the fear is the only thing keeping me from being stupid? He didn't answer that one. We set up an appointment. I agreed to try something for sleep. I wrote the time and date on a sticky note and stuck it to my fridge. After I hung up, I stood there for a long time, staring at the little yellow square. Matt's handwriting was gone. The Angel's rules lived in a PDF on my hard drive. The only scribbles on this one were my own. The doorbell rang. My lungs forgot how to work for a second. Nobody had warned me they were coming. No packages, no food delivery. I walked to the door slowly, every step loud in my own ears. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my stitches. Who is it? I called, voice tight. Silence. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No one outside my apartment. No neighbor fumbling with keys. No kid running by. Just the worn carpet, the scuffed paint, the exit sign at the end casting a dull red glow. I stayed there, pressed to the door, to the peephole for a full minute. Nothing moved. Get it together, I muttered. I backed away. Something slipped under the door. I stared at the small rectangle of paper that appeared like a conjuring trick. It lay there, perfectly centered on the doormat. No, you whispered. No. I didn't want to pick it up. I wanted to burn it without touching it. I wanted to move to a different country. I wanted to go back in time and not go to the bar that night. I picked it up. White, not yellow this time. Thick like cardstock. The letters were sharper, written with something darker than ink. The strokes were too smooth to be Matt's, too deliberate to be mine. There are other altars. Underneath, smaller. Sleep well, Daniel. My name looked wrong in that handwriting, like it belonged to someone else. There was no smiley face this time. My vision narrowed. My knees went weak. I sat down hard on the floor, note in hand, and laughed. It sounded like a sob. He was right, I realized. Keller was right. The cops were right. Everyone at the hospital was right. I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see. I had been taken to an altar I wasn't supposed to survive. My brain, in all its fragile, fleshy attempt at staying sane, had wrapped it in stories I understood. Angels, sacrifices, rules on sticky notes. For them, that made it a delusion. For me, sitting on my hallway floor with a card that shouldn't exist between my fingers, it was just reality with a mask off. I thought about all the rules. Knock twice. Don't look under the robe. Leave if it hums. Keep the hallway filthy. He likes lamb. None of them said what to do when it followed you home. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I jumped. It was a text from Zach, asking if I wanted him to bring over some takeout and a bad movie. I stared at the screen, then at the note, then back. My side hurt. My arm hurt. My head hurt. My reality hurt. But I was alive. I'm ordering. I typed back. You're paying. 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. Finally, you almost die and still cheap as fuck. On my way, I put the card in a drawer I almost never used. Not because I thought hiding it would make it go away, just because I couldn't stand to look at it anymore. Later that night, after Zach left, after the credits rolled and the empty containers were in the trash, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I waited for humming, for a knock, for the scrape of hooves on my floorboards. Nothing came. Hours passed. The city outside quieted. The refrigerator clicked on and off. A car alarm yelped once and shut up. Around 3 a.m., my eyes finally grew heavy. I thought about Abraham, knife raised, hand trembling. I thought about Matt, believing he was doing the same. I thought about Abigail, breathing easier now in some upstairs room, unaware that every breath she took was paid for in blood and madness. I thought about the thing in the robe, bending over me, calling me Little Lamb. I don't know if I slept or just drifted. At some point, in that foggy space between waking and dreams, I heard it. Not humming, not words, just the sound of hooves, far away, walking slowly on some unseen floor. Getting closer, I opened my eyes to my dark ceiling and listened until it faded. Maybe it was only in my head. Maybe it was in the walls. Maybe it was 3 floors below, 3 cities over 3 altars away. I don't know. Here's what I do know. They never found that robe. They never found prints that matched those hooves. And every doctor in that hospital will swear up and down that what happened to Abigail can be explained by statistics if you stretch them far enough. Everyone has their version. The cops have theirs. The doctors have theirs. Keller has his. Matt had his, right up until the bullets tore through him. And I have mine. I remember the smell. I remember the rules. I remember the voice in my ear and the weight of something old and patient watching me. And I know one thing for certain. It wasn't an angel.